Okay, so time to talk about the second movie in the double feature. The Boss Baby Family Business, also known as The Boss Baby 2. So, in my Spirit 2 video, I said that Spirit 2 was just as bad as I thought it was going to be, just as bad as I wanted it to be, because it's a double feature. I want us to suffer. That's the point. That's kind of what makes it fun. We watched Brave and the Good Dinosaur back to back, and those movies are terrible. Actually, was it Brave and the Good Dinosaur? It might have been Cars 2. No, I don't think it was Cars 2. I think it is Brave and Good Dinosaur back to back. Home on the Range and Chicken Little. One of them is awful, and I still think the first third of Chicken Little, when it's aggressively mean-spirited, is funny as hell. But the rest of the movie, it's fine. It wasn't true, like, alright, this is suffering, but it was still fun to just be like, yeah, we're gonna watch these two back to back, and I was so excited to watch the terribleness of Spirit 2 and the terribleness of Boss Baby 2 back to back with no reprieve, and this movie ruined it for me by being fucking awesome. I genuinely love this movie. I am surprised to say it. I was surprised to say that I enjoyed the first one, that I respected it, that it showed a lot of restraint. And to me, this movie, for the most part, just is a better version of Boss Baby 1. The one thing I will say that I'm a little iffy on, as I talked about in my review of the first movie, I love that because Tim has such an active imagination, there's a genuine chance, honestly, I feel like a more likely than not chance, none of this movie fucking happened. This is a kid remembering when his little brother was born and brought into the family, and that, yeah, when the baby showed up, he was the boss. When he needed attention, he got it. When he cried, everyone looked after him. He kept the entire house awake when he was crying at night, and everyone was wrapped around his little finger. And now that my brother is this big, successful businessman, I can't imagine a time when he wasn't like this. So I imagine our childhood being a certain way. That's a lot of fun. That's honestly a really clever idea. I don't think it's super funny, but for the most part, it wasn't super unfunny either. It's like, yeah, it's fine. I really like the way it looks during these imagination scenes, but the idea is so clever, and I think is genuinely well executed, that I enjoyed it. I have a soft spot for it. In this movie, especially by the end, it feels a little more on the nose of, this is actually happening. This is, like, they still bring up that, yeah, he has an active imagination. He still does. He hasn't really grown up. But, the fact that, like, he's narrating, but his daughter baby is still narrating it with him. It shows the antagonist baby being adopted by a family, and it feels like, no, this is something that actually fucking happened this time, which I don't like as much. However, something I do find really interesting, against the kind of clever about it, is it feels less like, this is how I remember childhood, and almost like this whole bullshit story is a coping mechanism. His daughter is really smart, not the baby one, but like his second grade, third grade-ish daughter is really intelligent and is growing up too fast. Like, when it's time for a kiss goodnight, she doesn't kiss her dad anymore. She's like, no, I'm a little too old for that. I'd rather shake your hand. She talks about her Uncle Ted and how she's like, I want to be just like him. He's so successful. He's so cool. Like, he's my hero, not you. Which is not something she specifically says. Like, this is not a rude kid. I actually really like his daughters a lot. I thought they were very fun, endearing characters. But it's not like, yeah, I fucking hate you, Dad. It's just like, no, it's like, we're a little more professional. But she thinks Uncle Ted is the greatest. There's also the fact that they talk about how Tim and Ted's relationship has, which I like that he's actually named in this movie. He's not just the boss or the baby. Like, no, he's Ted. Is that, yeah, it's not like they got into a big fight or anything. They just kind of drifted apart. They don't talk super often. They don't see each other super often. And Ted's very lonely as a result. And Tim while he still has his family, so he's not lonely, he's still happy, he does still miss his brother. So this whole movie, all the stuff about like, oh yeah, there's a crazy baby that is taking control, and okay, so first off, the evil baby is voiced by Jeff Goldblum. I fucking love that shit. As he was talking, I just looked at Clay at one point. I was like, so, here in apartments.com. I just have so much fun whenever Jeff Goldblum is on screen. Visually, in live action or in animation. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Thor 3, Thor Ragnarok. I think it's fine. I don't think it's nearly as funny as people were making it out to be. But Jeff Goldblum is so funny in it. The very ending where he's like, hey, I mean, you can't have a revolution without someone to overthrow, so let's just call it a draw. That fucking dropped me. That shit was so good. Sorry, it's hot in the car. I'm like really fucking sweaty. I want to be like, yeah, I've recorded 2 straight videos and then this one right after. I've been here a while. I'm like, well, Croods was really short and Spirit 2 was pretty short as well, and I don't know how long this one's gonna be. I haven't really been cooking, but anyways, point. Where was I? I'm going off on tangents again. I guess I take a shot. Fuck. Jeff Goldblum. Okay, the clever shit. So, there's a school run by baby Jeff Goldblum who wants to get rid of all parents because parents suck. It's better to have no rules and get to be a free kid forever. It really does feel like a coping mechanism. He's like, my daughter is super smart. She's kind of drifting away from me because of how much like she's invested in her schooling, in her homework. This is the evil entity that is pulling her away. It's not that I'm a bad parent. There's some bullshit going on. And I haven't seen my brother in a long time, and I miss my brother. Let me call him up to help me out with this, so I can kind of fix my relationship with my daughter. Part of it is also, I know he means the world to her. I know she means the world to him. And I'm really jealous about that. I really am. I don't want to be jealous of my brother, and I sincerely hope that's not the reason that I haven't talked to him in a long time. If there is any bad blood between us, I need to get that shit fixed. Because I fucking miss him. And my family does too. So he makes up a bunch of shit in his head. Like, I like that. Again, I think by the end of the movie, they're leaning more towards, no, this is all real, rather than it's all a metaphor, this guy is nuts. But I still enjoyed that. I feel like there's still enough in the movie where you can kind of make it seem like, yeah, this is all in his head, he's embellishing it. Blah, blah, blah. This movie is on fucking cocaine. Like, I was just talking about Spirit 2 and how it's a movie that's fast-paced, but nothing really happens. This is also a pretty fast-paced, it's like 2 hours, but stuff was just constantly happening. Like, there's this really long chase scene early in the movie when they're going to the school for the first time, which has explosions, a giant Christmas tree is set on fire, there's a giant snowball, there's a dude watching Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron in 3D, and then they burst through the screen, which after we just watched Spirit 2, felt satisfying seeing the image of Spirit getting, like, torn up. I like the first movie a lot more than the second movie, don't get me wrong. In terms of Spirit, with Boss Baby, I'd say the opposite. I like the second one a lot more. I feel like there's still energy in the first movie, there's still some fun scenes. This one feels more energetic, it feels a lot funnier. The line where Ted is talking to the family and he's like, yeah, like, I don't do Christmas on the 25th. That got a big laugh out of me. Like, for whatever reason, that line clicked. When he's playing with the other babies and he's trying to get away from to organize an escape. He's like, so, who wants to play Shawshank? That got a good laugh out of me and Clay. There was this one creepy baby girl who has, like, she has red hair. Like, she just shows up right next to Ted. Don't look at me. I laughed so hard at that. And then right after, he kind of like looks in her direction and then she makes this face where her eyes just like go in separate directions. I laughed so hard. anytime that character was on screen. You have baby ninjas at one point. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But there's a scene later with the creepy redheaded girl, and it's like this horror movie scene where the baby ninjas are terrified of her. Like, this is wonderful. This is wonderful insanity. Thank you. There's a scene where they talk how Tabitha, which is the older daughter, is tone deaf, and she's trying to sing, and Ted, who has now been aged down, because, yeah, I mean, the plot's a little weird and over the top, but he's been aged down, he's trying to help her out with it, and he has that face like, oh, you are trash at this. Now I'm your father, I'm going to be as nice about it as possible, but what the fuck? And the girl's pet fish named Dr. Hawking, who she has set up to this, like, voice changing program. So when she first shows it off, she's like, this is what he's saying. And he's just saying, like, my life is hell. And then afterwards, when she's singing, it's just, please stop, please stop, please stop. I was laughing. Like, I was consistently laughing with this movie, not at this movie. At the start, when Tim is talking to Tabitha, yeah, Tim, Ted, Tabitha, I think Tina's the name of the other daughter, so they're all T's. I might get these confused a couple times, I'm sorry. He's talking to Tabitha, and he's like, hey, let me tell you your favorite bedtime story. I mean, the one where you and Uncle Ted, like, saved Mom and Dad from a rocket, and there were babies and puppies everywhere. She's like, yeah, I know that one, Dad. It's a bit much. Oh, well, but the jokes were good, right? That got a good laugh. I was like, I appreciated just how self-aware they were. The other baby, Tina, who was the actual baby of the movie, I mean, you know, Ted turns back into a baby and shit, too. She's a lot of fun. She's kind of like Ted in the first movie, where she's a very competent character. She's, like, ruthlessly efficient. I just had a really good time with her. Like, it seems like, yeah, it's like she genuinely loves her daddy and is having, I keep saying having a good time, but that's all I can say about it. Which, I feel like if I had recorded Croods 2 before watching the double feature, I might have had a bit more to say about it. It would have felt a little more fresh in my brain. I feel bad that there wasn't a whole lot that I was remembering or saying, but I had a lot of fun with it. Since this is the one I just watched, I can remember some of the jokes a little bit better, especially the ones that really landed. But I don't feel like there were a lot of jokes that did not land. There wasn't a lot of baby ass in this movie, so look, an improvement. It was funnier. The heart of the movie, the actual relationship between the two brothers, didn't super click with me the first time I watched it. When I watched the first movie, I was like, this is fine. Like, I feel like they're getting together as, like, finding their brotherly bond because that's what the movie's about. How do I want to say it? Because that's how the movie is supposed to end, rather than that's the ending it's the ending that actually makes sense for these characters. But here I actually bought it. I bought that they're brothers, they love each other, but there is some unspoken resentment and kind of bad blood going on that's not so bad that they hate each other, but bad enough that they're avoiding each other. And yeah, like when they're, there's a scene where their parents are talking about them. So the scene ends, like, I'll talk about the shit that happens in the scene, but the scene ends with kid Tim leaving the house, and the parents are like, yeah, look at that kid. I didn't like him. That was another line that, like, really got me howling. But when they're talking about Tim, they're like, yeah, there's a Tim time. And he's like, well, it's Tim time. Well, you know, our son has an active imagination, you know, which is good, but, you know, he can be kind of oblivious to reality. You're like, yeah, he's just kind of in his own world where things like reality and time just don't exist. He's very absent-minded. He's often late to things. Deadlines slip his mind. We love him to death, but kind of yikes. And then they talk about Ted, and you're like, oh yeah, Ted, you know, he was always, like, do you remember when he sued us? Yeah, he was always a bit of a litigant, which, again, I gotta laugh. But they're like, yeah, he was always following his big brother around. Like, his big brother was his hero. Like, he loved him so much. And they just kind of drifted apart. And, you know, like, we love both our sons. And it's just heartbreaking to not see them together anymore. And then it's, yeah, like Tim hearing that and then Ted kind of being reminded of that. It does start to fix their relationship, but I really bought it in the scene where they both are thinking they're about to die, which, yeah, they got put in a Bond death trap, holy shit, they talk about it. I mean, there's a scene a little bit before where they kind of air out some of their grievances, but they're like, well, we're about to die, let's talk through it, even if it's only in our last moments, let's be brothers again. And sorry, my other hand is like starting to hurt from holding the thing. My wrist is going a bit numb. I'm going to try to end this here in a bit. But short version, Boss Baby 2 is great. I think the humor is better than the first movie. I think the heart is better in the first movie. I think the overall concept, I think I like it a little more in the first one. I like, again, that the first one feels more like this is not actually happening, whereas in the second, feels more like it's actually happening. But I do appreciate that you can still look at it as this guy's insane delusion. But it's honestly really good. It's honestly a lot of fun. I was hoping it would be terrible for a truly bad double feature, but hey, I mean, it's a good movie, and I'm glad I got to see a good movie.